So, hi everyone, I'm Robin. I work here at the Supercharge as a tech lead. As a tech lead, our job is mainly to do proof of concept applications, and also we lead the team to a goal that is common with the client, so we can work together on a nice project, and they and also us, both of us can like it, and all of us. And yeah, that's it. And as you can see, I'm in love with front-end development since jQuery era, like the others. So yeah, it's been a long time. And let's get into it. So about testing. Initially, I will show you everything about testing and what testing is, and talk about all these in general. So everyone will get used to what testing is. And after that, the next part will be about testing in React and how we do testing, and then how we can separate our business logic and make it maintainable. So there can be mainly internal and external reasons for you start testing. An internal example is stability, because you can make your code more stable, and it gains self-confidence for the team, because before every development and every deployment, you can just make it sure that your code is working, and you can just go home after work without all that thoughts in your mind that this won't work, or next day I need to code a lot, and things like this. And also it helps refactoring, because it makes sure that your tests are still working and your code is still doing the things that you want to, and also it increases the code quality. And also there can be external pressures. For example, the client requires you to write test plans, or also there can be code coverage requirements. For example, at Supercharge we have the mall project. That's a nice example for that. We need to deliver 80% code coverage, which means that we need to cover the lines of the code and the branches of the code by 80%. So at least 80% of the code has to be covered, yeah. And also, you probably got used to it, but it's a pain sometimes to do testing, because when you do a new feature, you need to also write a test, and it takes time. And also, it can be flaky when you upgrade the feature. You just add the new feature to your project, and you need to rewrite some of the tests. And it's not the best part, and mainly developers not really keen on with this thing. But let's move on how you can see testing. So probably you've seen this image, that how we look at testing. So we have mainly unit integration and end-to-end testing. End-to-end testing is the smallest in this testing pyramid, which means that it requires the most resources, and this is why you want to have the just a few of them. So you want to be shorter and faster, because you need to run the backend server and also your front-end application. You need database for it, and also all the third parties need to be configured, and the third parties have to give you a test environment, and all these requirements are really hard to meet and maintain and set up for every test run. So this is why we would like to have the less of these end-to-end tests, where we don't muck anything around our system, and it requires just a lot of resources. And the bigger part is the integration test, when we integrate our application. So we integrate some parts of our application, then we mock some parts of our application, which means that if, for example, there's a screen, we don't show the menu during the testing, or we are just testing a list, for example, and we don't check what's going to happen if we click on a link and all the parts integrated together. And the smallest part is the unit. This requires the less resources. So this is why you can just run a lot of them, and this is the fastest also to run. Here you mock everything around that component or that library that you are currently using, and you are trying to just test your code as a unit. And another way to look at the testing is the testing trophy, which is more common nowadays. Here you have another leg for it, that is the static testing, which means you run your code, you test your code without running it, so you just read your code. For example, static testing is a TypeScript or ESLint that you probably got used to it, and using these tools you can just write rules and check if those rules are met, and you can maintain the code quality this way also. And in this setup, the unit tests are smaller because it is really hard to catch errors with unit tests, and sometimes you need to write integration tests for it because there are more integrated way of the components that is needed to be tested. And the end-to-end test is the same here, so it is the smallest part because it still requires a lot of resources. And also the computers have got faster in the last decade or so. So the integration tests can run faster and it requires less time to set up. And also there are more types of testing. So when we are, so far what I've talked about was automated testing, so everything runs automatically on your computer, but also there are manual testing. Here you can think of a manual person who just clicks through your application and does explanatory testing, for example, and they can find new bugs by seeing a new button that shouldn't be there, or it's bigger than they've got used to, and automated tests cannot really find these issues. It's really hard to find because you need to take screenshots of all the parts of the application, and it takes a lot of resources again to be run and to run this in a browser. But integration tests, which can run faster, it's not that nice to find these issues because, for example, you can just match the DOM or other parts of your application. So, as we've got some image of testing and how to test and what we can test, let's go into testing with React. So, here's an example of a unit test. As you can see, unit test in React, mainly we just use the testing library here, and this testing library is helps to test our React components. As you can see, tests is consists of some parts that are required by the application. So you can see here, for example, this describe, which shows that we would like to describe some parts of the application. And then here you see this it part, or it can be a test, which means that you would like to finish that sentence by that it works somehow, or it should render, or you would like to test if it's doing something, how it's easier to finish the sentence, and then you write your tests. It has 3 parts mainly, so it's called 3 A's. So arrange, act, and assert, but yeah, as you can see, it's not assert here in JavaScript because in the JavaScript world we just write expect, and this is why it is not 3 A's here, but mainly you start with arranging. So you render your component, or you set up everything and mock everything around your component. Then you do the act part when you change something in your component. And then you do the expect part where you check if something has happened or not, or if it's working the way you want it to. For example, in this test, you can see that it renders a counter, and it checks if it has a heading, and it's having the counter as a heading text content. And also, if you think of all these tests, then as you can see here, we are using this render function which renders our components. So if you think of this from the component point of view, then this is a unit test because we just check this small unit, that's a counter, for example, here, and it has no other dependencies. So we just test this to a unit here, but this also renders your component, which means you have React in the background and you have React DOM in the background, and this is a result of this is a kind of integration test because you integrate it with React and you check if it's rendering the nice thing with React. And this is why I'd like to refer to this as a component test, because we don't mock here in our component, and also we are running this using React. And I would like to show you some tests here. So this is just an easy project setup by Vite. So yeah, it's a Vite project with the Vite initial setup, and it's just a really simple application. Dev. And yeah, as you can see here, it's just a starting application of the Vite project, and also we have a counter here that we've just talked about. It's really simple. It has initial count, which is 0 now, and if you click on it, then it increases the count. That's it, and this is a very simple component, so you can understand it, and all of us will understand how to do this testing. And yeah, this is the initial setup, and let's check what we can do with testing. So as you can see here, we have our counter here that renders H2 element, and also we have our button, and we have just a use state and the set count, so it's really simple. And if you check this spec file, which is for the testing, then you have here your test. It is really nice to name your test, so you can know what component you test. And also here you can see the example that we just seen. So it checks if we have a heading of a level 2 element, and then it runs it. And also we need to maintain all the business logic that we have here, which is not really much, but I also wrote here 5 tests to test it. So for this even really simple component. So for example, we check if the button has a text of the count is 0 when the count is 0 by default, and then we check if we have count as 1 after clicking an element. So here you can use this fire event click for click an element, and then you want to see count is 1 on the screen, and you hope that there's a button with count 1. And also we checked here if the initial count is set and it is sent to the use state, and then we check if there's a button with that text. And also here we check that if it increments from the initial value, and if it does, then this test will also run. And to run these tests, we just run npm run test. It runs the tests, and it's also watch for the files. And here you can see all the tests have passed, and we have this counter file ready. And if I change some, oh, I've never done this before. If I change something here, for example, we expect the count to be 7, and I rerun it, then we see the test failed. So yeah, you can see and show it yourself that this is running. And yep, let's move back to our presentation. Yep, so this was a very simple example, and this has really not much to test, but as complexity gains, for example, you can see you can have a lot of components inside your component that is used as a dependency, and it's imported. So you can have a lot of business logic behind it. So you can have a really big chunk of hooks, and you cannot really see what's going on, and all these endless lines are really hard to maintain. So React gave us a really nice way to overcome this problem, which is a custom hook. So you can separate your hooks in a way that all the hooks are in another file and another function, and then it is really easy to understand what's the business logic behind it, and you won't use your features that you don't want in your component, and your component will be only responsible for the rendering. So let's just demo this for the really simple component that we just had. Yep. So as you can see here, we had our counter, and it is really easy to do this refactoring because you just need to put everything into a new hook. So you can add here a callback. For example, you can name it increment. And then you can use callback for this, because this way your function won't be recreated. And then you just move this to a new file. So for example, you create here a counter hook.ts file, and you just move everything here, use function, use counter. It is so smart, and I would like to return these two and import everything. And we have the initial count here, and it's number and 0, and that's it. And here I can use that other one. So this is just really the same code as you can see, and now we can use those parts. And for example, we cannot use set count because we don't need set count here in the counter. We will just use those parts that is required. Count, yes, and use counter. And yeah, our only dependence now is this use counter hook, and everything works the same. And it is really easy to check if it's still working the same, because we have our test running here. Even if I run it again, the whole watch, then all of our tests are passing, so it still does the same that we want it to, but now we have the business logic separated, and it's more easy to understand the whole concept. And yep. So all about this mocking and what mocking is. So and in a unit test, you can also mock all these things. So from now on, as we separated our business logic and our views, now we can just mock and use both of these without the other. So we can check if our view shows the right things and calls the right callbacks when we click on an event or we click an element. And also we can check if our hooks, like this counter hook, works in a nice way. This probably means that we need more tests to cover both of these parts, but those tests won't be that flaky, because if the business logic changes, then we don't need to check the whole UI and the views, and also the same for the views. If the view changes, we still have the same business logic behind it, and we don't need to rewrite those parts and tests. So I will show you again something on this. So yep, as you can see, we can also write tests here for this counter. I just create a counter hook spec file for it. Yep, and here you just write your test. This will be counter hook, yes, and it should increment. Oh, it shows everything. So yeah, so initially we just go by words. Yeah, so initially we would like to see the result of this render. So this render hook is a function given to us by the testing library of the React. And in this testing library, you can just pass a hook to it, and it renders that hook, and the result will be in a useRef. So you can use the current value, for example this, as the test just shows it to us. And yeah, the test's text is not nice, because we don't want to increment, just check if it runs. It should render, for example. And now it passes this new test that we just wrote. And here we can check what's going on in this counter, and we can use the count that we've just got as a result, but we can also check and also increment the counter. But if I do this, as you can see, this is just the current value of this part. So we also need to write here an act to run this result. Yep. So so to change anything in these hooks, you also need to write the act part of your test and test everything after that. And we can quickly go through all the tests. I won't save this one and revert everything. Oh yeah. Delete files. And yep. As you can see here, an act part, if it's needed, then you can use this act function, which is also given by the React testing library, and you can use that to run your tests. So here you arrange that, for example, you use the use counter and you call the increment and you expect the count to be 1. And also you can check if it sets the counter after you set the initial count and all these parts. And this means that we with all these 5 tests and all the other 5 here for the view, we cover the whole business logic and the whole application. And these are separated, and it is really nice to test this way because you can just run the tests for the required parts of your application. Yep. And also, if we check this smoking part, yeah, we try to evolving towards the complexity. So you can have a lot of components and you can have a lot of hooks. For example, you don't want to test the React test query hook when you are trying to check your counter code, or for example, your listing code or whatever. So you can use all these mocking tools to mock all of these parts of your application. And it is also really nice that you can test your component then without your hook also. So you cannot just mock the hooks that's given by other libraries, but you can also mock the hooks that's in your libraries. For example, here we just use this VI mock counter hook. We also use VI with to run our tests, and this is why we need it. This text just matches up with the import, and this import then can be overridden by vtest with vmugged, and we just use this use counter that's imported from here, and we can give it a mock implementation for this hook. And here's the mock implementation. We have the count and we have the increment, which is still a function. This way we can check if it's called or not. And then after each test we reset all the mocks. And also now you can see that that everything is still working here. So for example, I can set the initial count, and the initial count is passed to the hook. So the hook is called with initial count 5 here. Or you can also check if the increment function is called, which is mugged right now because we use this increment function here, which is used in the before each part. So it is really easy to run the tests this way and write all these tests. And thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, then feel free to ask it. And I hope you got a really nice understanding of all these parts and testing and how we do testing here in Supercharge. And yeah, let's talk about it later. Thank you.